Priti Patel is out of the Tory leadership race with Robert Jenrick on top. Let's have a little look at the results.
Results in alphabetical order. Kemi Badenoch, 22 votes. James Cleverly, 21 votes. Robert Jenrick, 28 votes. Priti Patel, 14 votes. Mel Stride, 16 votes. And Tom Tugendhat, 17 votes. So as a result of the ballot, Priti Patel is eliminated from the contest.
So goodbye, Priti Patel. I actually thought she might have done, I don't know, a bit better. You know, she's been in the government for years. I kind of thought she had a bit more standing, but I guess not. I really loved Priti Patel's campaign poster she posted just before the vote on social media. I really love how she mentions Labour is anti-business, because Priti Patel is so pro-business that when she worked for a lobbying and PR firm before becoming an MP, she worked with British Tobacco, where she lobbied MEPs against tobacco regulation, helped defend the image of British Tobacco when it was revealed a factory they owned in Burma was jointly owned by their military dictatorship, which is one of the most deadly in the world. British Tobacco paid the military generals around $16 million between 1993 and 2002. And then she also defended British Tobacco when it was revealed children as young as 7 were working in their factories in Nigeria. That's how pro-business Priti Patel is. We've got Robert Jenrick in first place, who very famously walked into a children's migrant centre, saw a cartoon mural of Mickey Mouse and said the murals were too welcoming and had them painted over. That story just speaks for itself. In second place, we've got cultural war Kemi Badenoch, who recently attacked the government for means testing the winter fuel allowance and then called them dishonest. But then the Telegraph reminded us of this moment.
There's a lot of dead weight in how we run government. I have people in my constituency telling me that they don't need the winter fuel payments that we give them because they can afford it. Why do we not have a more sophisticated mechanism for means testing? Those are the sort of long-term things which government should be doing, which we haven't been doing because we're focusing always on the short term, on the news headlines for tomorrow. So what I'm not going to do is give headlines for tomorrow. I'm talking about system change.
That was a clip that the Telegraph resurfaced from Kemi Badenoch's last prime ministerial campaign. I love it when these clips just crop up out of nowhere. In third place, we have James Cleverly. He hasn't really had any exceptional scandals, I don't think. He's quite the average, boring, slightly more centrist Tory who's all about uniting, but at least along with Kemi Badenoch, he doesn't actually believe in leaving the ECHR, which actually surprised me. I thought Kemi would be, champing in that. But unlike the other candidates, they all want to leave the ECHR, and they're trying to make it their unique selling point, but they're all trying to sell it. Fourth and fifth places, Mel Stride and Tom Tugendhat. Maybe if they get a little bit higher on the list, we can chat more about them. But right now, I think they're a little bit insignificant. We'll have to see what happens at next week's vote on Tuesday to see who else comes out on top.
It's hard to believe, though, because do the Tories feel like that their leadership, the leadership of their party, is a prize worth having? I mean, I don't know if it is, to be honest. But I think it's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Become a leader of that party. I think you're headed for insignificance either way. It's hard. I don't know. It's possible. I was expecting that Priti Patel was going to do relatively well, given that she does have, like you said, she is so business minded. But I honestly could be Kemi, possibly, but it's hard to say. I don't know if I would be able to make a prediction into the Tory party. I don't know if I'm invested in the Tory party as much as I should be. But I guess we'll have to see. Maybe Shapster will be in for a chance, but I think it's difficult for me to predict.
I'm trying to think. I really don't know who it's going to come down to. I know Kemi is quite popular, but I don't know. Maybe they'll just settle on more of the centrist types, like a Tom Tugendhat or a James Cleverly. When it was
Cleverly.
What was that? Sorry.
Quite possibly, it could be James Cleverly. I mean, he has been making
Yeah.
quite a few appearances, particularly when he was in Sunak's cabinet and stuff. But is he someone that could be trusted? He hasn't really had any mishaps that I think are worth noting or holding him to account for, that I think are heinous enough to be like, James, I don't think any Tory supporter won't trust you. But yeah, I
I
don't
think he ki
I
I
don't
think he kind
know.
of represents too much of the previous government, whereas I feel like Kemi was able to separate herself so much from Rishi Sunak that she's not necessarily associated with, like, Rishi Sunak, but I think James
Mm,
is, and the rest of them as well. Obviously, Priti's gone now, but with Tom Tugendhat, with, Mel Stride, is there another one? I can't remember all their names now, that I don't think they
Grant
have that
Shapps?
almost like sorry, I don't think Graham Shapps was on that list, was he? It's getting
Oh, is
late.
he
I
not?
don't
Maybe
think he
not
was on that
actually.
list.
Yeah,
But
I think it's very close.
ultimately, I feel like at least all of them besides James probably has like the
Mm,
least association with the previous government. So I really don't know. When it was the last leadership competition, I kind of thought I actually somewhat liked a little bit Tom Tugendhat because he kind of represented that kind of Cameron era Tory, where obviously there were still
mm,
many bad eggs. But if you compare, the Cameron government then to what we ended up with towards the end of Rishi Sunak, it's not the same party. But when he was running for
mm,
leadership, he then started throwing trans people under the bus. And then now, Tom was known as like the more kind of centrist, old school, early Cameron Tory. And now he's like, oh, we're going to leave the ECHR. I want to leave the ECHR. When only in 2022, he was like, no, it would destabilize the country. It would be
it's
ridiculous. We'd have to
interesting, yeah.
rework the Windsor framework. We'd have to rework the Good Friday Agreement, which are all true. But now, because
Mm,
he just wants power, he's like, oh, ECHR, goodbye.
mm. So do you actually think he's got what it takes to rebuild the party, given that he's changed his tune so often? Well,
I
not
don't
so
know. He
often,
has
but changed his tune quite significantly.
on paper, like maybe I listen too much to American politics where everything's about like people and their military backgrounds, but he has a very strong military background, right? And I feel like if he leverages that maybe a little bit
Mm,
more, he could appeal to certain types of voters because he's got an impressive military record. He's got amazing knowledge on foreign policy. His dad was like I think like a senior judge. Like he's got like an impressive background. So if he leverages that a lot more,
mm,
maybe I don't know. A lot of people are saying that the Tory base are too racist to let in somebody like Kemi Badenoch. On top of that, she's a woman, which,
mm.
yeah, the Tory party have given us 3 women prime ministers so far, which is way more than Labour have. But at the same time, we also
Such an
know that
epiphany.
misogyny still is an issue, regardless of the fact that the Conservatives have given us 3 female prime ministers. Misogyny is still an issue, and just
Mhm,
racism as well. So can she overcome
absolutely.
those barriers? I don't know.
Well,
Uh,
I don't know if she'll I mean, I doubt Kemi quite a bit, but I think she's gotten away with saying and doing what I think is she's quite minimal, I think, in nature, and I think she does that
yeah,
on purpose so she isn't held to account, on what some other political, individuals might be held to account for when they say problematic things, but I do find her to be a bit of a mumbler, and I think that she will face quite a few challenges. I mean, any person who holds a position of power, particularly if you're a woman, I think you're under quite a considerable amount of scrutiny. And
yeah,
then throw that you're black into the mix, it will mean that you are looked at through a different sort of lens. But the same could be said for James Cleverly. Cleverly, I think, not an aptronym for who he is as a person. I don't know if I can trust him enough, like I said, but it's one of those things where we just have to see. But yeah, I don't trust that party at all whatsoever, given that we've had 14 years under them. And I still am of the essence that is this truly a prize to be had? Is it really a worthy prize, given that you don't have much I mean, such a loss given the general election that they've just had. So I don't know.
yeah, and on
They've
top of
got a
that as
lot of
well,
reshaping to do.
like history tells us in theory that if you're going to be taking over as the leader of any party after you've just lost, after being in power for a period of time, you're probably not going to be the next prime minister anyway, because
Mm.
leaders just simply don't last that long. After I've literally forgotten his name, the prime minister after Margaret Thatcher. Oh my god, why have I forgotten his name? White hair. wow, I shouldn't be doing politics shows if I can't even remember the name of the Prime Minister before Tony
Stop.
Blair. Oh my God, I'm gone blank. Anyway, there was multiple Tory leaders after him and between Cameron, because after every few
John
years they just wanted
Major.
to. John Major, thank you very much.
You're
I'm
welcome.
gonna just leave now. They had multiple leaders in between John Major getting defeated and David Cameron coming to power. Some of them only lasted like 2 years, because when you're in the opposition, they get fed up of them because they don't get any traction. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. I'm kind of glad
Yeah.
Priti Patel's out of it. For me, I
So
was
am
most
I.
scared of Priti Patel, but now I think I am.
I'm
Oh,
frightened
go
of
ahead. Sorry.
her. I'm sorry, I'm frightened of her. I've been frightened of her ever since she was Home Secretary and I was just like, I don't think I could stomach the idea of having Priti Patel have that sort of power or have that sort of say in Parliament. And it comes back to, and sorry, this goes back to the previous story, but it comes back to that the whole safe and legal routes. She had done so many things and said so many things that I felt was so despicable, that having her out of that race brought ease to my heart, because it meant that she will not inflict as much harm as she did when she was Home Secretary.
Mm.
She's to me, she's a frightening woman, and I'll never forget the death of the 16-year-old Sudanese boy who I don't remember his name, but they'd found his body had washed up onto the waters, and it was because of her policies, her attitude, I think, to migration, and I feel like that attitude of hers will persist if she was to still be in the race. So I do veer on the side of caution when it comes to her. So
And you
that's
know
the
what?
subject.
I'll just throw it out there, even though it's not necessarily relevant. But I like to remind people that Priti Patel had to resign from government, I think, in 2017, because she was secretly meeting with Israeli officials, including
God.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, multiple times behind the back of the government, the Prime Minister, and the Foreign Office. None of them knew. And in the context of the idea of Israeli influence and lobbying within our government and within other governments, I feel like the context of that is really important, because it shows, she's obviously under the form of influence, and it's not tying into ridiculous conspiracy theories, because I hate all of that stuff and I decry it constantly. But we do know that there is influence there, and that's part of the reason why I've always been afraid of a Priti Patel coming into power, because what that would maybe mean for Israel, Gaza, West Bank, and all those issues too.
Patreon.com, Turn Left Media. Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you, Turn Left.